I would like to officially open this webinar. My name is Katri Contio. I'm at the moment in El Salvador, so greetings from El Salvador to everybody. I'm working in the Information Systems and Digital Health Unit in Pan American Health Organization. And this webinar series objective is to increase the literacy of the digital health among the health workers in the region. And I would like to now pass the word for our moderator, Dr. Chiaki Miki from Peru. Over to you, Chiaki.
Muchas gracias, Katri. Muy buenos días.
Thanks a lot, Katri. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. I want to welcome you to this course on automated coding on causes of death with key tools from the World Health Organization. And for this, I want to introduce our speaker, Karin Alsachen, who's a technical official in Geneva and the WHO specialized in digital health with the main approach in the CD11 and the rules for mortality coding. She's a specialist in public health and information systems in healthcare with more than 10 years of experience, having contributed to the development of the implementation of the ICD-11 and leading the creating of digital tools like DORIS and Edit. She's also provided support in the initiatives of civil records and vital statistics in Lebanon and in the world. She speaks fluently Arab, English, and French, and she's currently leading the international implementation of ICD-11 for verbal autopsy and mortality, in addition to performing as focal point for WHO for several groups of experts and the international classifications of WHO network. Her work combines technical excellence and healthcare standards. So we're very happy to welcome Karin. Go ahead without further ado.
Thank you, Chiaki. Thank you for the nice introduction, and thank you for having me today. Good day, everyone. I am gonna just jump in and start my presentation. So today, as Chiaki said earlier, we are gonna present the end-to-end solution for mortality reporting. All the tools and the standards that we have in WHO will be presented in the next few slides, so that to help countries as they scale up the implementation of ICD-11. First, we wanted to highlight that we have different types of tools. Now that we all live in the digital world, we need tools to maintain the tools that we are producing. So in this slide, you will see two sets, and then the next slides. The first, we're gonna talk about all the user support tools and standards we have in WHO. And then we will mention briefly the maintenance tools that we use in the back end so that we are able to support and maintain and update the tools that are available for the mortality and cause of death production. At first, I'm gonna start with whatever we have as end-to-end solution for mortality reporting. On the left-hand side of the screen, you will see all the different tools that I will talk about in the next few slides. And on the right-hand side of the screen, we wanted to list the available resources as well that could help users and people that are transitioning from ICD-10 to ICD-11. ICD-11 reference guide is a very good resource where you will see all the detailed information on ICD-11. We have tabulation lists available, maps from ICD-10 to ICD-11, an implementation guide, of course, that will support the transition. And we also have a training platform where you could train your coders or your users on how to use ICD-11 coding tool, for example. All these resources are available, free for use, of course, for everyone. And the most important part is that they are multilingual. Let's start by, I'm sure some of you are already familiar with the WHO 2016 Medical Certificate of Cause of Death. So it all starts when a person dies and you have to fill in the information that is the death certificate, basically. And in WHO, the latest version is the 2016 version that you see on the screen. Ideally, it is filled in by a physician. and it determines the sequence of events that led to death. And it's very important to have an accurate examination of the dead body and to report as much information as possible for public health purposes and to select the underlying cause of death. And in WHO, as part of the digitalization, we have digitalized kind of what we call the electronic medical certificate of cause of death that you see here on the screen. It is the exchange format. On this link, you will click on the link and then you will find all the specifications needed that you can build in your already existing system so that you start standardizing the information at the input side. And the fact is that maybe some of the countries cannot move to the 2016 medical certificate of cause of death. However, many of these fields can already be used in your own systems. So we invite you to check the electronic medical certificate of cause of death on this link. And this is where it all starts, basically. Next, once you fill in the medical certificate of cause of death, the sequence of events is listed in frame A, and additional information are listed in frame B. However, when you have the cause of death, you want to code the information. So we, in ICD-11, there is what we call the ICD-11 coding tool or the browser. Both would give you the relevant codes that you need in order to code the cause of death. What changed from ICD-10 is that you used to look at the book and look at the annex and scan the book a page after the other to get to the code. At the moment, because everything is now smart and digital, the WHO created this coding tool. It's like a Google search. You look up the cause of death that you want, you get the perfect match, and then you will be able to code the cause of death. Another way would be to look up the cause of death that you want or the diagnosis that you want using ICD-11 browser. In this way, you could actually see the chapter, the structure, the parent of the entity you're looking for. And not only that, because ICD-11 is now multilingual, you are able to see on the same screen, left, you select the language you want, and on the right, you can select another language. So in your case, you could have Spanish and Portuguese, English and Portuguese, or English and Spanish. It depends on what you want to look for. This is very helpful for countries where there are multiple languages used in the national systems. And then, so that was what we call the ICD-11 browser. In this screenshot, we wanted to show you that the smart coding tool, it's not only that you could get when you search the diagnosis, this tool is trained to give you the combination of codes that you want. And it also understands abbreviation, and it also gives you additional information that you want. So for example, in this screenshot, we have the type 2 diabetes mellitus. We just added the abbreviation T2DM, and the tool understood that it is type 2 diabetes immediately. We didn't really spell out retinopathy, and it gave us diabetic retinopathy as a perfect match. So you could see that it is smart enough to suggest for the user a combination of codes instead of the user itself, instead of spending time looking for the code. You now just have to review the code and select it. This is another example where in death certificates, in many instances, we have information that we want to capture, but we couldn't before. So if you look at the coding tool here, we added cancer instead of neoplasm. We added left, stage 1, and grade 2. And then the coding tool itself gave us the combination of codes, the STEM code and all the other extension codes for the stage, the grade, the anatomy as well. So this is also reduces the burden on the user, and then you just have to review the code and select it and implement it in your medical certificate of cause of death. So we have filled in the medical certificate, we have coded the cause of death. The next step would be to select the underlying cause of death. I hope most of you probably are familiar with the mortality rules that were in the ICD-10 Volume 2 book. These rules were established as a set of guidelines that standardize and define how to select the underlying cause of death in a meaningful way for public health purposes, and you could capture as much information as it is available on the medical certificate of cause of death. So this was the purpose of creating the mortality rules. They were all text-based rules, and people were following these rules internationally since they started across different countries. It helps to maintain mortality statistics and consistency across all the reports that are available from different and across different countries and health systems. When we were trying to digitalize these rules, we created what we call the DORIS tool. So the DORIS tool is a tool that is automatically selecting the underlying cause of death based on these mortality rules. It's the digital open rule integrated cause of death selection tool. The name is a bit long, so short for DORIS tool. But the idea in this case was that we have an algorithm running behind this tool that would automatically select the underlying cause of death. So it reduces the burden on the user of reviewing. If you are familiar with these diagrams, these are the rules that were in the ICD-10 Volume 2 and now ICD-11 Reference Guide, the text base. There are different steps. There are different modification rules that someone needs to follow to the letter. However, now the algorithm does this for you, and you only need to review it and then accept what the underlying cause of death selected. Otherwise, you would have to probably do some quality checks on the information that is available. So that is why WHO produced the user guide of the DORIS tool and the tool itself. It is to help you, the countries, to move to ICD-11 for mortality reporting. This transition, this plays a key movement from the ICD-10 to ICD-11 without having to have too much of a burden, because before it was text-based mortality rules. Now they are all automated. So now you can focus actually on improving the quality of the medical certification and the reporting. It is faster, it is timely, and it is automatic. So if you have a medical certificate of cause of death, even if you don't follow the WHO one, if you have in your countries the local one, the tool is flexible to read from only the information that is available. You don't need to have all the forms, you just need to have the minimum information, and then you can run the DORIS tool, and then you will get the underlying cause of death. In case you have more information, the tool also understands what is in the frame B of the certificate, for example, and then also takes it into consideration while selecting the underlying cause of death. What is also important is that this tool is multilingual. As I showed you earlier, ICD-11 is available in 14 languages at the moment. So the tool also follows that lead. It's not only the classification that is translated, it's the whole platform. So when you run the DORIS tool, you can run it in Spanish or Portuguese or French or even Arabic. So you could actually see the user interface in your own language on top of having the classification in Spanish, Portuguese, French, or Arabic. So these are features that would help you transition and also reduce the time on the managing the death certificates and focus more on the quality of the certificate. Moving on to the features that will help while managing the data. What is important in this case, if you are familiar with the dictionaries, your own dictionaries, or what you used to use for mortality coding, you don't have to do that anymore. Now, the classification is being updated every year or every 5 years, and the DORIS tool and all the other tools available within the ICD-11 frameworks follow the same cycle of the ICD-11 update. So that reduces also the burden on the country to maintain their own dictionaries. And then the fact is that the maintenance process is a public platform online. You could actually look at the changes and understand why things were updated from one version to the other, or from one release to the other. So you could look at the proposals that are on the platform, and even yourselves can submit proposals given if you have good evidence and rationale for the changes. It is meant for long-term use, and also if you have a big database that you want to run in the DORIS tool, it can handle what we call in the batch processing mode, thousands and thousands of certificates. We have even tried millions and it works. So the idea in this case is if you have text-based death certificates, you can run the tool and then you will get the coded certificates and then you review the quality after that. So that is to help you in the real-time data management. It runs on Windows and Mac. This was in the 2025 release. And we have other benefits that I will show in the next few slides, but they are all captured to help you use the tool without having to spend a lot of effort on formatting or managing the data. Everything that you need to know, it can be found on the DORIS homepage, which is it would be the ICD-11 homepage, icd.who.int/DORIS, and then you will get the web version, the DORIS desktop version, and also the version that is in the APIs. As I mentioned, the tool does not replace the humans. So you might need to have some checks after the DORIS tool runs and selects the underlying cause of death. You can also select the language that you want or the release that you want. So it is important to know what are all the available features that would help you in managing the data. In this screen, I'm showing a few screenshots of the available home pages and languages, and more are underway. They will, in the 2026 release, we will have additional languages in ICD-11 and the DORIS tool. As I mentioned, the web version and the desktop version, DORIS tool is also available in the APIs. What I mean by this is that you don't have to use the web version or the desktop version. You could take the rules and embed them in your own system from the algorithm that is in the API. So this is something that is useful in case you don't want to change anything from your own system in your own data workflow. You just take the rules and embed them in your own system. Same as the coding tool of ICD-11. In this case, this is just a screenshot for individual certificates. The web version is meant for training purposes or running one certificate after the other. It is not meant for batch processing. The batch processing mode is in the next slide, which is the desktop version. And I will show you just some captures, screen captures of how do you want to import your information or your database into the DORIS desktop version. The key is to format the Excel into an input that is needed for DORIS tool. This formatting, if you are using the EMCCT standards, is minimal, but you still have to put it in a format that is understandable by the tool. It runs on, you can import Excel, CSV, or JSON format. And the other two modes that we have, what I mentioned earlier, is the free text mode. You could run the databases that are text-based certificates, or if you have ICD-11 coded certificates, also this can be imported into the DORIS tool. And in this screenshot, you could also see that this is we ran around 50,000 certificates in this batch, for example. And then you could tell that you list all the certificates here. You could click on the certificate one by one, see what is the information in this certificate. You could also see the information of the data set all together on the right-hand side of the screen, where you will get how many were processed, what was the version that was used, the ICD-11 version, the language, and even in this case, it is a text-to-code mode. You will get how many matches you got. And if in your own languages there are a lot of synonyms that are missing, the tool will tell you this, and then you could actually take these synonyms and talk to the relevant teams that are translating ICD-11 to include these synonyms in the classification, so everyone can benefit from the language-specific synonym that you have, so that you get better matches on the long run. The more you use the tool and you provide feedback, the better the information and the search and the matches will be. This tool is also meant for, as I mentioned, the management, to simplify the management. So you could actually sort or filter only the warning. This way, if you have a perfect certificate, you don't need to check it. The tool would give you the ones that need manual check, the ones that are inconsistent, where the information is inconsistent. This way, the burden of reviewing every single certificate is less, and the data management is faster, and the flow works better. After you manage your data and then you run and you're satisfied with the DORIS output, you can export it there are two export modes. You can export the DORIS output itself with the underlying cause of death and the report all the steps that were applied for the selection of the underlying cause of death. However, to also simplify the process for the users, we have created an ANA-code 3 input file. ANA-code 3, I will show in the next slide, is a tool that helps with the quality management and producing trends and statistics. So in this case, you just have to add the population to the input file that is exported from the tool, and then you can immediately import it into the ANA-code tool. Now, what we wanted, and as I mentioned, that there is this report that comes out of the DORIS tool with all the steps of the mortality rules that were applied. And we wanted to be as transparent and as comprehensive as possible. So we have the textual report that details every single rule that was applied or not applied. We have a short coding report, and we have a longer one with all the steps. But in this year's release of the DORIS tool, we have also introduced a tabular report, rule flow report, and a rule sequence report. These reports are the same, basically. It's the same information displayed in different ways in case you want to understand a bit more how the sequences were applied, or at the same time, you want to know, you want to train your users or newcomers on how to use the ICD mortality rules. All of this information is available in the DORIS user guide that can be found on the home page, and you can have also access to the ICD APIs and how to integrate the rules in your own systems. And the next step, after you select the underlying cause of death, is, as I mentioned, to use the ANA-code 3. The ANA-code 3 is the analyzing mortality and cause of death tool. It was produced by WHO to support countries in the management of their mortality and cause of death data. The same web link, ICD URL, icd.who.int/ANAcode. This is just to simplify how to get to all the tools that we have in WHO. And it helps you in your data journey where you want to produce statistics, create trends, and even improve the quality of your reported data. We have one more tool that is under development at the moment, which is the code edit. Some of you may already be familiar with it. It was produced also by WHO to perform routine checks on the cause of death data that you have. So in this case, if you have the gender inconsistent with the cause of death, or the age inconsistent with the reported sequence, there are many checks that you could do at the filling in stage or in batch processing. Before, the version 1 and 2 were very basic access a tool that was running on computers. We have been upgrading and updating the code edit to a version 3 that will be available in the ICD-11 APIs and online and offline. Same as the DORIS tool, we will have the code edit tool. The purpose is to have some quality checks that can be built in your own systems if you can take them from the APIs, or you can even run the code edit, process the code edit before you process the DORIS, and then you will get also the checks and the warnings. You can go back, fix the warnings before you go to the selection of the underlying cause of death, and then you can identify inconsistencies and improve the quality of the cause of death data. And it follows the ICD-11 multilingual, free for use, available online, offline, and in the APIs. All of these features will also come to the code edit tool version 3. It will be released soon in the next couple of months. After you finish your data journey, the cause of death data journey, you need to report it to WHO. Nowadays, the platform, the WHO mortality database is an interactive platform where you can visualize your mortality data and compare it across different countries and in the region. It is also available online, and then you can report to our colleagues in WHO your ICD-11 data, and of course you used to report the ICD-10. Now, this is where the medical certificate of cause of death journey ends. But as a lot of you may know, that the medical doctor is not always available. And sometimes in remote area, where you don't have a medical certificate, medical certification, you still need to capture the cause of death. So WHO built what we call the verbal autopsy method. It is based on a verbal autopsy instrument, which is a questionnaire that you could take to the next of kin, where you could ask and elicit information on the signs, symptoms, medical history of the deceased. And this information will be captured using a smartphone or a tablet in the electronic format. After you capture all this information and after the interview, there are two ways to assess and identify the cause of death. First, of course, it's always the physician. That is the gold standard, where we would have 2 to 3 physicians review the answers and ascertain the cause of death. Or we also have algorithms that were built based on the probabilities that are out there, that are between the symptoms, signs, and the cause of death. And then the algorithm assigns the likely cause of death that is captured from this information. So there are two types of identification of cause of death using verbal autopsy. But we don't recommend using this method except in remote areas. The gold standard will always be the medical certificate of cause of death filling. And now I want to move to the maintenance tool, a very quick overview of what we have in the back end that supports all the tools that I presented earlier in my presentation. So as you can see, we have a value set platform. Some of you may already be familiar with the ICD-10 when we had the tabulation lists at the end of the book. These were like aggregated lists of codes. We have transformed them into ICD-11 special tabulation lists for morbidity and for mortality, but we have also created what we call value set domain. So any type of list that you want, you could introduce into this platform. So for example, we also added the verbal autopsy list of causes of death, any list that is available, just in a user-friendly, multilingual platform so that it helps you identify the applications. You can include value set, exclude value set, so it's easier to manage. And as I mentioned in the DORIS tool, there is a big algorithm that is running behind to select the underlying cause of death. If you want a sneak peek of this algorithm, we have the rule-based platform, which is all the mortality rules that were text and that were made digital. But we have it in a platform where you could actually understand the instructions and also link to the reference guide, specifically where the text was, and you can list all the codes that were in relation one with the other. This platform is still under draft, will be published with the next release or the one after, pending the completion of the review of all the rules that are out there. And the last maintenance platform that we have is what we call the mirror. You know, when you update all these algorithms, you need a platform that where you have a test database for certificates and a gold underlying cause of death. This platform is very useful for us when we make the updates. We always want to get to the underlying cause of death that is suggested by the physician and by the rules. That this is where we have produced what we call the mirror platform. And if there is an update that happens and then the rules are applied, and if they are applied correctly, the certificate passes. Otherwise, we would have to investigate what is the missing link and include it in the back end. So these are all maintenance platforms that are helpful, and the HUFIC network and the mortality reference group and many of the experts are helping us build this platform and maintain the rules and the classification. And before I end my presentation, I wanted to show you that we have also educational videos on YouTube on ICD-11, on the DORIS tool, on the APIs and many other features, the reference guide that are in the ICD-11 and the proposal platform, the translation platform, etc. The idea in this is that we have produced some videos, short videos, to help you understand and also train others. We also added a link to all the PAHO produced videos that were very well done and then translated into other languages as well. So they are linked to the playlists, as you can see here. You could have videos on the APIs, on the mortality data process and quality, on the DORIS tool. So we really invite you to check out these videos because they were built by several and reviewed by several teams, and they can be helpful in training others on how to use all the WHO tools and standards that are available. I think with that, I will end my presentation, and thank you all for listening carefully to me. And then I added here all the emails that you might, like my personal email and the ICD email inbox, in case you have any questions or you need any implementation support. Of course, in HQ, we are ready to support, but also with Katri and Chaki, we are all working together to give you the best possible help in implementing ICD-11 and the DORIS tool. Back to you, Chaki. Thank you all.
Muchísimas gracias, Karim, por esta excelente presentación sobre la solución digital integral para el
Thank
reporte
you
de
very much,
mortalidad y
Corinne,
las
for
nuevas
this
funcionalidades y
presentation
actualizaciones que
and
se
the
están
new
trabajando en cada una de
functionalities.
ellas, ¿no? Si tienen alguna pregunta,
If
la
you have
pueden
any
realizar en la
questions,
casilla de preguntas y respuestas aquí
you can
abajo.
go ahead and do it in the
Hoy día
Q&A
hemos
session
podido
below.
comprender cómo la OMS está trabajando en este
We've been able
ecosistema
to
digital
understand how
completo que integra
PAHO
herramientas
is working
claves
with
como son pues
this
la C11,
full integration of
DORIS,
tools,
el certificado
ICD-11,
médico de
DORIS,
causas de defunción electrónico,
and
ANACOG
the
3,
electronic
COD EDIT
causes of
y la
death
autopsia
and
verbal
death
para las zonas
certificate and
donde no
verbal
se
autopsy for
cuenta
the
con un
areas
médico para indicar la causa
when
básica
there
de
is no
defunción, ¿no?
physician to help with
Estas
the basic
herramientas
cause of
están
death.
promoviendo la
These
estandarización y
tools
la
are encouraging
interoperabilidad
standardization,
y la mejora continua
interoperability
de
with
la
continuous
calidad de estos
improvement,
datos de
and the
mortalidad
quality
a
of
nivel
these
mundial, ¿no?
data of
Y estas
mortality
innovaciones no solo
globally. And these
automatizan estos
innovations aren't
procesos
only
técnicos,
automating
sino
these
que
technical
ayudan a
processes,
fortalecer
but
la
are
toma
also
de
helping to
decisiones en la salud
strengthen
pública,
decision
pues
making for
sabemos
public health,
qué
because
importante
we
es
know
saber de
how
qué está
important it is to
falleciendo
know
nuestra población
what our
para
population
justamente
is
enfocarnos en
dying
esas
from
causas
so that we can
y
focus
dirigir la
on those
atención en
causes
prevenir esas
and
muertes, ¿no?
direct our
Asimismo, estas
attention into
herramientas
the
son muy
prevention of
importantes para
such
los
deaths.
países en su
These tools are
transición
also
hacia
very
sistemas
important for the countries
digitales, ¿no?
into their
Para que
transition
sean más precisos,
into
eficientes y
digital
sostenibles.
systems to be more accurate,
Entonces, agradecemos
sustainable, and
profundamente a
efficient.
Karim
So we really
y
thanked
bueno, ahora
Karine very
tenemos
much, and we
algunas
now
preguntas.
have some
Em,
questions.
En el caso, bueno, tenemos una pregunta del panel
So
que
we
dice
have a
si es que
question
DORIS
here
puede
that says
interactuar con
whether
las
DORIS
CIE-10,
can interact with
con los
ICD-10,
códigos de CIE-10.
with the codes of ICD-10.
Thank you for the question. When we first started building the tool, it was based on the 10 rules and the classification. But now that we no longer maintain ICD-10, we have only ICD-11 codes that are read by the tool. However, if you have the ICD-10 titles, you could use the text-to-code mode of the DORIS tool, and then you will get the underlying cause of death selected by that. So you could actually match if you have the ICD-10 code and title and use just the column of the title, and you could use the DORIS tool.
Acá tenemos otra pregunta de Carlos
Perfect.
Felipe
Here we have
Arteaga,
another question from
que
Carlos
es,
Arteaga.
¿qué estrategias
What
recomiendas
strategies
sean más efectivas
do you
para aplicar en
recommend
un
or you
hospital de
find
tercer
are the
nivel
most effective
en
for a
cuanto a
third
la adaptación
level
de
hospital
CIE-10
in
a
terms of
CIE-11,
adapting
tanto en
ICD-10 to
morbilidad como
ICD-11, both in
mortalidad?
morbidity and mortality?
In terms of using all the tools or the classification, this is a big question. So the strategies is depending on how you want to start. You could start by a small scale and then make it a small pilot within the hospital, and then increase to the nationwide implementation. Or you could actually do a top-down strategy and then start with the high-level officials when they come up with a decree to move to the ICD-11, and then everyone would have to move. But the idea is that the transition, we have a lot of resources available. We have a guide that is explaining all the steps that you need to move to ICD-11 if you were using ICD-10 or ICD-9, or depending on which classification you are using, you could actually follow this. It's basically the same steps, but that are tailored to depending on your needs. And Katri and myself and Chaki, we are here to go over the data flow that you have, depending on what you have locally, nationally, the institutions that you have, how difficult or easy it is to discuss within the same institutions, within the same country, because the challenges is sometimes you have different system and fragmented system, like in my own country, and the systems do not read from each other. The great part is that if you use ICD-11, you will be using the same language across all systems. So it's like one step further to interoperability that you want when the systems would talk to each other. However, if you do not have that, you could start by piloting in one hospital, and several countries have done this. You take one or two big hospitals and you start doing, either you can do dual coding exercises, or you could actually train people using the ICD-Fit platform that we have on how to use the coding tool. And then after that, you could start by improving the capacity, training of trainers, and then it would increase, and then you will have more people involved, more people understanding ICD-11, and then scale up the implementation to a nationwide. So I hope I answered your question, but this is a big question for such a short time. We are happy to support and then provide with all the advice that you need to your local needs, of course.
Sí, correcto, es una pregunta bastante larga y compleja.
Yes, it is
Pero
quite a long
muchísimas
and
gracias,
complex
Karin.
question to answer
Tenemos
so
esta
quickly.
pregunta
Thank
de
you, Karine. We
Doris,
have another
y
question
es que si
about
ya puede
DORIS, and that
determinar
is
la causa
whether
subyacente
it
de
can
muerte
determine
y
the
las
underlying
muertes
cause
por
of death
causas
and
externas,
that's
y
due
si
to external
funcionan
causes, and if
igualmente
it
para las
works
muertes maternas.
likewise for maternal death.
Yes, definitely. Whatever is in the ICD-11 or Volume 2 reference guide, or the mortality rules that were in ICD-10, they were all translated into a digital format. And we had rules for the external cause and the injury codes and how to apply these rules. They all are following the international standard, basically. You will also capture a lot of maternal mortality death, and there are checks that are available that would prompt you, especially, for example, an ICD-11 coding tool. We would start just from the beginning. Even when you search for a code, you will get a hint from the coding tool that this has a maternal a code in the maternal chapter, basically, and it would prompt the coder to go to that code instead of going with the general cardiac arrest, for example, the code that is meaningless in that case, for example. I think it is whatever was the practice that was followed was transformed into just a digital format. And of course, you know, in maternal mortality, each country, you all have your own committees to review the maternal death. And then the DORIS tool is just one step forward in improving the quality of the reported maternal death. But it's also, you have to follow your own national regulations for that as well.
Perfecto. Tenemos también una pregunta de CIE-11. Si es que
We also have a
CIE-11
question about
incluye
ICD-11,
códigos
and that
para
is if
infecciones
ICD-11 includes codes for intra-hospital infections.
Yes, I believe we have several different codes in different chapters. We have chapter 1, of course, it's all for the infectious diseases. However, I invite you to go look at the exact code that you wanted to capture. If it's not there, this is a very good question. Then I would invite you to submit a proposal on the platform that would be with the valid rationale in terms of why do you need this code, and what was a lot of evidence, peer-reviewed journals that are specifying this code. But I believe if it was a code in ICD-10, then it might have migrated and even expanded in ICD-11. So I would invite you to check and go to the proposal platform if you miss one or the other of these entities. Back to you, Jackie.
De acuerdo. Tenemos muchísimas preguntas, Karin, así
Okay,
que
so we do have a lot
seguimos.
of questions.
Si es que Doris puede aceptar ficheros
So we're going to do it
PDF
until the time is off.
de
So
certificados
if
de defunción.
Doris can accept PDF files from death certificates.
Yeah, that's a good question as well, but unfortunately, PDF is very static, and you cannot run the tool. You need the text in a very readable format. If you have a PDF, it does not allow you to read. So it does not work on PDF. However, I believe that if you have a PDF, you might have the original form or in a data entry form that you could actually translate into an Excel or CSV or JSON format, and then you could run the DORIS tool. PDF is something very static, and maybe with the AI in the future, we might be able to read the PDFs, but believe me, even if we have a PDF, the handwriting of medical doctors is really difficult to understand, even with all the technology that we have out there.
Muchísimas gracias. Ahora tenemos otra pregunta que dice,
Okay, thanks a lot. Now we have another question that says, medical diagnosis vary country to country. Doris could be fed with medical terminology that is being used from different regions as coders. Then there are occasions that certain diagnosis recorded by the physician is something we cannot find in the ICDs.
Yes, that's an excellent question. And that is the advantage of having ICD-11, because in ICD-10, whenever you wanted to update, you would wait years and years for the updates to come out. However, in ICD-11, whatever you, as synonyms or local terms or abbreviations that you find that are missing, as I mentioned, like there are teams that are translating ICD-11. I think you could reach out to Katri, and then with these lists, we can point them into the right direction, and these can be incorporated in the translations in the next releases. But what we invite you to do as well is you don't only give us the missing terms, you should also allocate the ICD code that should be related to these terms. Because even if we need to know where this national term is used and under which code. So we are able to mix and match based on the existing terminology and the synonyms that you are providing.
Tenemos otra pregunta.
Perfect. We have another question. How has the experience been to integrate the DORIS tool into the deaths registration system?
Well, we have a lot of success stories. Do you want to take this, Katri? The question is about how to
Yes,
it
I
was
understood
integrated.
it. Maybe
Okay.
you can the Karine to share, the some of, like from your regions, but answer is yes. You can integrate with any third-party applications with the APIs. And in fact, there are the works ongoing in that regards. For instance, Suriname that just allows the electronic death certificate, which is coded with the ICD-11 in a backend when the doctors fill in the death certificate and the cause of death. And the next step would be that the process would that they are in Suriname integrating with the APIs, the application that it will notify the deaths directly to civil register database. Also, there's the other examples with the DHS2 application use, where they have specific mortality model that includes WHO death certificate that can be customized for the local use. And it includes the DORIS in the backend that codes automatically with the ICD-11. And the DHS2 has been successfully integrated with the CRVS applications and the databases at the Ministry of Justice with the APIs. I don't know, Karine, if you have any specific, the use cases that you could, if you recall something, like from the other regions that have done it. Assume there's
Yes. Thank you,
other
Katri.
regions many examples.
Definitely. First, this is good. This is great to know. And Katri has been a very big champion in supporting all these countries to move to ICD-11 and to integrate in their own system. Every country has its own challenges and opportunities. So, for example, in the African region, many countries did not have anything, so they started from scratch. In this case, ICD-11 was a very big asset because they could immediately use this end-to-end solution from the start, where they did not have anything to migrate from. So they used all the tools. What is good in in the WHO tools is that you can use each tool as a standalone or as part of this end-to-end solution. So in your case, you will look at your data flow or the workflow that you have in your own country and see what can be done. Do you want to integrate the coding tool, the rules, like they did in the HIS2 on many other different systems that are out there? I think Malaysia, they made an excellent, it was an excellent example. There are a lot of public available papers on that. We have a lot of other countries that have used all these tools and ICD-11 as a base. And then you could only just look what you need, which tool do you need, or do you want to use the APIs in your own system, or you could actually use the DORIS tool as a standalone, or the code edit as a standalone. If you have another practice in your own country, you could only take the algorithms and run your own systems. So this is a big question, but it is a very relevant question for you to think in your own context, what tool can be useful and in what way.
De verdad que también es una
Excelente.
pregunta bastante
It
grande.
is really a big question as well.
Estas experiencias que han tenido los
This
países
is
han sido
about the
de mucha
experiences the countries
mucha
have
utilidad
had
para
that have
justamente
been
para
really
otros países,
useful
¿no?
for other
Tenemos
countries.
otra pregunta
Okay, we have
y
one
es
more
que
question, and
hay una
that is
lista de
that
causas
there
de
is a
básicas de
list
defunción
of
que
basic
no
causes of
están
death
permitidas
that are not,
como causas básicas
let's say,
justamente de la
allowed
defunción,
as
¿no? Por
basic causes
ejemplo,
of death. For
paro
example,
cardiorrespiratorio, ¿no?
like
Entonces,
respiratory
Greta
heart
quiere
attack.
saber si es
So
que esto
Greta
está
wants to know
integrado
if this
en
is
la aplicación de
integrated
DORIS, ¿no?
within
Si es
DORIS
que el listado de
application, if the
patologías no
list of
definidas están
pathologies that are not
integrados
well
en DORIS.
defined are integrated also in DORIS.
They are, and they are integrated not only in DORIS, but in the upcoming code edit tool. And this is because they are in the reference guide of ICD-11. It is one section that is called ill-defined causes or causes that shouldn't be used for underlying cause of death. So these rules that are, these are instructions more than rules. They are applied across all the different tools that we have, including DORIS tool.
Otra pregunta que se tiene es
Perfect.
si
Another
DORIS
question here
incorpora
is
las
whether
listas
DORIS
cortas de
incorporates
defunción,
the short
como los grupos de
lists
102
of
causas.
causes of death as the groups of 102 causes.
That's a good question, but the idea with ICD-11 is to move away from lists, because if you have information that is available, having a list is limiting your data management. So in my country, for example, we started a separate project using this list, and we kept adding to this list. I was managing all the death certificates, and every time I would find something very interesting on the death certificate that I want to capture in the system, so I would go and edit this list. So after editing this list several times, we decided not to use this list because it is very limiting when you have all the ICD-11 classification, extension codes, post coordination. When you go and look at the coding tool and all the available information out there, you would want to capture as much information as needed. For example, the rare diseases that were not captured before in ICD-10, they were aggregated to some codes, can now be captured with URIs, with entities in ICD-11. So we always recommend not to use any lists. And if at all you want to use a list, we have provided the morbidity and the mortality tabulation lists that I mentioned earlier, just because they were a practice in ICD-10, but we don't recommend the use of that so that you can actually make better statistics using all the available information.
Tenemos otra pregunta y es, ¿cuál es la visión a mediano
Another
plazo
question,
de la
what is the
OMS
midterm
respecto a la
perspective
evolución
from
de DORIS y las
WHO
otras
about DORIS
herramientas
evolution and the
digitales,
other digital tools,
especialmente en cuanto a
particularly in
inteligencia
terms
artificial
of
con
AI
nuevas funcionalidades
and
en el
new
desarrollo como el
functionalities and the
code edit?
developments such as code edit?
So of course the evolution is whatever we have. What is good is that it follows the update cycle of ICD-11. So before, for ICD-10, we used to wait 10 years for an update to be made. And when COVID hit, we saw, all of us, how important it is to have the most recent codes, the most recent available information in the classification. We start with that. And then when COVID hit, we had to create also mortality rules on how to certify the causes of death in the COVID-19 round, for example. So we updated the rules based on that. We updated the instructions that means. So DORIS is going to follow whatever we submit as proposals on the platform. But when I say we, I say the general public, people like you, the mortality experts, the morbidity experts that would need to improve the search function, as we mentioned earlier in this call, or the rules that can be based on epidemiological evidence that this is no longer relevant. So we make the updates, and DORIS and Code Edit would follow this update. Of course, this was based on endorsement from all the experts of the network that are all epidemiologists, statisticians, pathologists, and medical doctors as well, and many other professions. So that to say, this is when we talk about standardizing the rules and the classification. Now, when AI comes into the picture, of course, we are exploring in WHO how to benefit from the AI in improving our tools. And we have several streams under development, let's say. We have not yet published anything related to AI, but what we can say, it might help with the text to code. This can be very useful in a way to identify what the physician meant. If there is a trend, a pattern, if we have additional synonyms that are available that the AI can capture and suggest to include in the classification to improve the search function, to get to the code, that is very relevant and very helpful in terms of AI. However, we will always have to follow the standards in terms of rules and codes that are the WHO standard. Even AI will not be able to change that. We need to follow to keep the international trend and the international reporting. We all have to have the same pattern or the same rules. So this is where I think we should be very conservative in following the rules that are provided by DORIS and Code Edit.
Perfecto, muchísimas gracias, Karim.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Karim. We want to thank I want to thank you for sharing your knowledge and leadership, and all our participants for your great interest. We've had many questions today, and now I hand it over to Katri to wrap up this excellent webinar.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you, Karim, so much, and WHO, for supporting always our region. And thank you, Dr. Miki, the moderating the session. Dr. Miki is one of our PAHO expert on training of the DORIS. And I also would like to give the special thanks, for all the logistic teams, Miriam Garagolia, Lizeth Cotter, Anita Serrano, and Gabby Contreras in our interpreters to making this possible for the multiple languages. I also, by accident, deleted a question, from the chat, that was asking where you can access the DORIS tool. And it's available on the WHO website. I put it in the chat, the link. It can be downloaded as a desktop version from the WHO website. There's also the API advice how to use the APIs to use it and as an integrated, with your own systems. And it's available with the multiple languages in Spanish, English, and French, which are and Portuguese, which are valid languages in our region. But with the further note, I would like to thank so much, for all the participants, and we will still have the 2 additional sessions on literacy programming this year, which we will share soon. The dates are the one is in November and the one is in December. Unfortunately, I don't remember exact the dates, but we will post them soon during the chat. Thank you so much, and have a great weekend. Goodbye.